Hello and welcome to another live Google Hangout. And today we are going to have a little bit of a continuation to the Hangout that we spoke to previously, also with Mark Korsky on creative anarchism. I realized that there was a part of me that wanted to share more about myself in relation to being also a person that has walked a process in relation to deciding to be part of the world change, so to speak. And we've entitled this discussion From World Witness to World Changer. And because, of course, this came up as an idea, we decided that it was a nice opportunity to have another person, a colleague, a friend of mine, to come here to the Hangout and actually be the host or be the person that asks the questions. And she is here with me. So she's Maya Jarel. Hi, Maya.
Hello, hello.
So to everyone, I will introduce her in a moment. But to remind you, this is going to be a hangout of sharing myself, my process as a person, regular person that decided to become an activist. And this is mostly a hangout where we can all learn from each other, not only from me, but also if you want to share some questions, comments, perspectives on what we go discussing, that will be really great. So Maya, let's start with you and sharing a little bit about yourself and how come you're here.
Okay, so I'm a business mind synergy coach, and one of the things that I like doing is always interviewing people and getting to know what drives them and what motivates them. And when the point opened up with you last week, I saw it as a win-win situation for me to interview you and get another aspect of a human mind, and for you to have someone actually interviewing you so that you can share your story and the process that you have walked in relation to being an activist. And you have a very interesting process in relation to, and I don't want to tell you, going to tell your story. So that's why we decided to do this hangout today, where I'm going to ask you some questions so that we can hear your side of the story and also connect it to what I do as a life coach, which is also, I'm saying a life coach because basically the mind and its dimensions, it's not just the business mind synergy that I'm doing, it's also, as we're going to discuss a little bit later, it's also pertaining to life, the individual lives and the collective lives.
Yeah, which ultimately giving ourselves a purpose in our lives really defines everything that you do on a daily basis. And we will be then sharing more on my story. So let's start already.
Cool. Okay. So, Marlen, what got you to actually start doing those hangouts that you do for such a long time?
Well, first of all, there was a previous phase where I was doing more like blogging, and I still do recordings on world change situations, like problems that I would encounter that I would decide to educate myself on. And in that, I decided that, this is getting a little bit isolated in me just publishing. I got actually the idea that it would be great to have a conversation with more people. So someone who is Joe Park from the Venus Project and recently Copiosis contacted me and said, hey, what you guys are doing is great, but why don't you guys have more of conversations like Hangouts? I didn't even know what a Hangout was. And it was through him, and he was kind enough to share with me the exact steps on getting to do these Hangouts. And, we started once and we've been doing them from over 2 years now. So this was mostly like a need to not only publish stuff, but also get in contact with more people and to expand our vision in terms of what I would see in that moment as the world solution, or, what can we learn about each other, which has been definitely very cool and empowering as well.
Yeah, interesting. And were you always interested in politics, economics, talking about world topics, or how was it for you?
Well, I'd say that I had, when I was a little girl, I noticed the reality that I was living in. I mean, I'm from Mexico, and when I was 3 years old, I saw a little girl that was panhandling, my same age, on the street. And I just asked my parents, hey, why is that girl not having sufficient money or having parents that take them to eat ice cream like I'm doing? And they were just like, well, that's how things are. So that response really didn't satisfy me. And ever since, I've been kind of curious about, why is this world the way that it is, and why not everything is working for people. So that has been like a background motivation. But in the end, I never linked it really to politics as such, economics. There was really a phase of my life where I knew I wanted to do something about it, but I thought that, for example, through art, I could do it. And then it was ultimately realizing that, well, if I want to change the system, the world, how does it really work? What moves it? Well, it's money, politics, and economics in the end, and understanding how we relate to all of these things. So because I had no idea of it, obviously it's not my area of or profession as such, it was an entirely self-educating process. So it was something that I would do on par with my studies, which is art. And from there, it was like, I'm not an expert, which I know many times prevents us from doing anything public. I'm not a pundit on the topic. I'm not an expert. But I decided that if I was educating myself, hey, why not sharing it and learn as we go, which was quite a process of resistance at times because of this thing of you're not the professional, you're not the pundit, you don't know it all. But it was mostly like walking through resistance of also getting into politics, because politics here in Mexico is like synonymous with corruption. There's nothing beyond that. I was a little bit interested in, for example, politics in the US when I was like 14 years old. But then 9/11 happened and the whole Bush era started, and I got completely disillusioned and said, no more politics, no more of that. I just want to hide into my art world, which I did for a while. And we will talk about that later. But that's, definitely something that didn't come naturally to me. It was something that I mostly realized I had to get into if I want to do something about the world or world system specifically.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how, like in your past, you were more into art. I can see also behind you there is art features around you that I'm pretty sure that is yours. So tell us more about your art and your past before the Hangouts and the politics.
Yeah, well, it was a phase of my life where I precisely was very disillusioned about seeing myself as part of being an economist or a politician or anything like that. And I said, I don't want anything to do with the world system, literally flipping the finger at the system, so to speak. And I said, what is the opposite? Let's go to arts, which was a necessary process for me to actually see that even in art school, I had still this intent of, I want to do something about the world. I want to change people's perception about this reality, that we can change it and so forth. So I walked the whole career, but throughout it, I kind of realized that making a picture or the kind of art that I was personally doing wasn't really going to place the message straightforward to people and get to that point of direct connection or communication that I was expecting to creating the viewer or the art receptor. So this still left me a bit unsatisfied with what I was doing. And that's what kept me also researching. There was a phase when, yes, I was doing art, but I got into spirituality and trying to find something greater than myself that I could subscribe to, so to speak, that I could promote as, yes, this is the solution. So this was like a constant drive that I had, and went through many, many things and ideologies and philosophies and so forth, until I found a group that we are now as Equal Life Foundation. And this happened throughout my art career. And I realized that, well, I found a group of people that we can see the same problem, we can join together and start discussing solutions. So definitely that gave me a better perspective as to what else I could do beyond just making my art. It's not that I completely dissociated with art, but I rather started focusing it to self-creation, which is also something very interesting that we discussed with Mark last week on that human potential and that creativity that artists tend to have to envision a new world, to envision a new way of doing things, to think outside of the box. I do see that I can be that I stand as that, but I didn't know how to direct it in a way that can get as much influence as possible, as much effect as I could, to empower others in the end, to share the message, so to speak.
Yeah. So what was the point, or when was the point of inspiration to move you from art to politics, which was something you disliked? What was your inspirational point in time?
Well, it was definitely an understanding of, through these investigations of how the thing that was enslaving us all, keeping the world as is, was money. And so money is tied to an entire system where there's governments, politics, how we participate in society. And I kind of knew that, with making an image, I was mostly focusing on depicting it as all the chaos that it is, which is more like the paintings that I would do in the background. So that doesn't say much. I wanted to give some direct message of, yes, this is our responsibility and we can do something about it. So when I started self-educating on the problems that we see in many things, with animals, environment, politics, corruption, all of these things, I started making the blogs as well, publishing myself on YouTube, which is something that I would not have done before at all. I was a person that I was destined to be behind a canvas, isolated, not wanting to talk to people at all, being with as less people as possible. So it was really like a point of pushing myself to say, if I want to awaken people, I have to first take that stand of, I'm going to share myself. I'm going to open up a blog. I'm going to share myself on YouTube. So that was when discussing these topics of politics and economics and so forth, I kind of started realizing that that's mostly where we are less aware of how things work in our society, and the topics that most people would resist going to. So it was more like walking through that loathing politics character that I had become, because I was completely it, to rather that point of, why don't I instead understand it so that I can speak about it, share with others, learn from others, and continue empowering ourselves to realize that, hey, if this world system is our creation, then we can also change it. Why not?
Yeah. And I mean, I remember I physically met you about six years ago. And my memory of you is someone who is with the music the whole time, very isolated, don't really want to social. And I really like social. I like people. And I've been trying to get into your space, and it was always, give me my space and my music and my art. And you made such an incredible process of actually open up yourself to other people and to communicate with other people and actually enjoy it, which is something that is extraordinary in looking what you did or who you were 6 years ago and where you are now and what you're doing as a living expression of yourself.
Yeah, it was definitely yeah, it was a complete change for anyone. And this is also cool to share, because maybe people say, oh, she's always been this outgoing, extroverted person that can be on YouTube and share these things. Not at all. I mean, just making one single video on YouTube was a huge point of resistance for me, and fear. And, you go through all the points of being judged, or what will people say about what I'm speaking. But as you go practicing it and as you go making it, you go kind of, making aside all of those obstacles, which are in the end self-created. So
Yeah.
yes, I was that isolated person and that, a bit introverted, but in the end, I knew that the only way to get out there and to really get to people, I had to overcome that as well.
Yeah, which actually brings me to the next question, because you were mentioning before that when you were 3, you were asking your parents, but why this girl doesn't have the opportunity to eat ice cream like I did? And you were 3, it's like a very young child, an innocent child. And as you move through the years, you kind of, or maybe you can describe what was that, or what is still there that keep driving you, and what is this force that is keep on pushing you to do what you do right now, because it seems like it's always been there for you.
Yeah, it's definitely that sense of injustice that really pushed me down or made me feel very inferior, very powerless to change anything in the world. And because that made me very depressed and very isolated, as I mentioned as well, I realized that I couldn't keep on living like that. Yes, I would read many books about how people would see the world, but no one was leading to a solution. So,
Yeah.
and I would watch, and I still do, watch many documentaries, many interviews with many people. But something that is always lacking is like, let's do this. That is a solution. This is the way forward. Not one, but many ways forward. And
Yeah.
I'd say that that is part of the motivation, understanding that this is not a system, because I focus a lot on the world system, of course, that became like my thing. Wanted to understand why things are as, sorry for the word, fucked up as they are, and then placing a way forward to it, a solution to it, even if it's simple, like me publishing things and making these hangouts and placing these videos on YouTube. That's already taking a stand in a public manner to say, hey, we all have to wise up, we all have to stand on this, and we can all do it in the end. There's the internet and we all have access to it, so why not? So that motivation of pushing forward a solution, which is why also with basic income, we created the proposal of a living income, and that stands as our proposal, but we realize that there's a lot more to also encompass in terms of solutions, and that keeps us driving every day. It's morphing as we go, because we see that there's a lot of things that need change in this world. It's not only in relation to money or politics or economics, and ultimately, it has to do with more people standing up. So the fact that someone can send me a message and say, hey, I like what you're doing, or thank you for what you're doing. I watched the Hangout, and now I'm going to investigate basic income or living income. That's great. So that's also part of the motivation, to know that there's people out there that are listening, reading you, and getting inspired by it. That's also a great part. But ultimately, the push is really the recognition of social responsibility, which is self-responsibility. We are in this
Yeah.
world. It's not good for all people. Why it isn't good for all people? So we have to make it good for everyone. We have to make it a better place for everyone. So that's the motivation. It's like a greater thing that I could be part of, instead of just me and my personal life and personal preferences and so forth.
Okay. So how could you define, or what is purpose to you? A purpose.
Well, purpose has something that I will define, which is not, is something that we usually like doing. Like, I thought that my purpose was making art, which eventually, sort of finding how the state of the world is, I kind of make that decision that I will take it as a hobby. I won't make it my priority right now. There are other things that need to be done in this world. So that comes through understanding that right now, this world is in need of a lot of understanding of how everything works, needs more of one's self-education, because we don't get taught anything relevant for the most part in schools. We have to also empower each other to realize we can change things. We can change our minds in relation to ourselves being part of that change. And that became like, I didn't even realize it was a purpose, because it was just like a decision that made sense to me. It makes sense to do something that is geared toward this world awakening that I see is happening. You know, we see it with everyone that comes to these hangouts. And why would I remain into my only preference of, you know, living a life isolated or not making contact with people, but just having this notion of I want to change the world? So it was more like, how can I become this person that is part of this change? What can I practically do? How can it be part of it? And that has been mostly it.
Okay. I mean, I was asking that question because it's very interesting. When I'm working with people, one of the first things that I'm going to do with them is to define their purpose. And I found with doing that for so long, I found that a purpose is something that most people actually misinterpret or don't really understand what the word purpose means. And when I investigated it more, because I was asking the question of why so many people are going to see life coaches or business coaches or seeking for help. And so many people want to make a positive change in this world, but there is no change. And I kept on asking why people are not changing. And one of the answers that I found was that the word purpose, it was created as something big, like something that you either are born with or that you need to, somebody needs to give it to you, and you all your life trying to find that purpose or live that purpose. And as long as you're not living that purpose, you're feeling stuck or unfulfilled and don't really know what to do with your life. So I was looking at the word purpose the whole time, and even now when I'm speaking with you, every time it just becomes more clear. Because if I'm looking at your life and as a 3-year-old girl that already had this expression coming through, and that expression was, I want to know more, I want to ask questions, I want to investigate, I want to explore, I want to discover, because I am seeing things and I don't really understand what I'm seeing. So I want to understand more, I want to explore more, and then I want, with everything that I found out, I want to share it with others, because it makes sense to me to share it with others. And that was something that you were naturally born with, that expression of exploration and investigation and discovery. And that was the life force. I was asking you before, what was driving you? What was the driving force or the life force in you? And what I'm seeing and also knowing you is that your drive to investigate, explore, and discover is what is actually driving you. I mean, not a lot of people, for instance, will go and watch so many documentaries or go and educate themselves in topics that naturally they dislike. But because you have this bigger force inside of you to go and explore, you could have faced the resistance to politics and economics because your force of investigation was greater, if you will. So then, once you have that life force, then it's time for you to basically decide what is your purpose. So initially, you gave yourself a purpose, and that was in art. And you were looking at how you can express everything that you discovered and explore and investigated through your art, and then show people or educate people through your art. And then things have developed in your life, and other things have inspired you to move into politics and economics, and then you basically decided to give yourself another purpose or a different purpose, which is, again, to express that life force, but give it in another form, like Hangouts, blogs, YouTubes, which is another form of expressing that is you. I mean, your living expression of investigation, discovery, and exploration. So a purpose is actually something that you choose to give to yourself based on your natural expressions. And I think most people are actually don't understand what natural expression is, because, for instance, in today's world, if you are a kind person, then people might define you as weak. So you becoming a nasty person, to suppress your kindness as a living expression so that you won't be judged by others. But look at the baby. Baby in its pure expression, when they're born to this world, there is good. There is no evil there. which means that every one of us has that potential to express something that is of worth and become together in the equation of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, coming together and create a life that is actually of worth and empowerment for each other and to each other, because we can actually give that expression, acknowledge that expression inside of ourselves, recognize it, accept it, and then decide what purpose we're going to give to ourselves to be able to create this world that we want to create for ourselves and the children and other people in our environment. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that. We have a question. Well, we have a comment, and this is from Anna. She's saying, yes, I agree. When I decided on a purpose for myself, it wasn't some grand existential decision. It was simply a decision to be the best teacher that I could be and prove to myself that I could commit myself to something and see it through. And I agree with what you mentioned as well, Maya, on it being a decision. And it's not like, hey, I'm going to make Hangouts and that's it. But you have to live that process. It's actually work that goes behind doing all of this. And sometimes I would also get into the idea of, I have to do something in politics, but what? You know, and it starts with something as simple as sharing that self-education and starting with very simple points until eventually you go creating your own way. It's like a river, no? You have a starting point and then you go making your own path along the way. And that's something that I would also like to share, because sometimes we get very frustrated into saying that, you know, it must be something big and grand and magnificent. But, you know, nothing starts that way. You have to start from the very basics, the most simple things, and give it continuity, and then see where you go leading yourself in the way. So it's like having that vision of, I want to be part of this. How? Well, I have to create a way. And then you go finding and trying different ways, which is also very cool and empowering. And one definitely places one's creativity at work.
Exactly, because many times, because we haven't given ourselves a purpose, is because we don't know the how. Like, how can we express our living expression that we naturally live? And one of the things that I'm telling or suggesting my clients to do is use the internet, find out what other people are doing. It doesn't have to be just that or that. There is so many things that you don't even aware of. Make yourself aware of the opportunities that is there, you know, it's here. So that's also in relation to creativity. You can, if there is nothing that is already here, you can create something. And it's effortless. At the moment you give yourself a purpose, it's effortless. You don't feel like this burden on your shoulder. You just live your natural expression anyway, and now you're just doing something to express it, that you believe in it, that is going to support you to reach your goals or your visions. And it's really effortless, even when you do things that you don't necessarily enjoy. Let's take you, for example. Politics and economics, it wasn't something that you enjoyed. But because you gave yourself that purpose, now it's becoming something that is even enjoyable, that you don't, you know, there is no burden on your shoulders saying, I need to understand politics, I need to understand economics. Nothing like that exists in you. You just, okay, this is what I want to do. Now I want to learn economics and politics so I can understand better, because this is what I do. I explore, I investigate, I discover. And now I'm making a decision to give myself a purpose to understand politics, to understand economics. And there is no longer a burden, it's just effortless.
It is so, and it is, as also Liane Gale is saying, Liane, self-determination should be a human right. And yes, it is actually part of our creative abilities and our potential that many times we don't get to live because we listen more to all the judgments and all the fears that might come up when trying to do something that is for the public or for others to see. But as you go walking through it and as you go doing it, it becomes definitely easier, as Maya is explaining, because you're just making it part of your everyday living. It becomes like who you are. So just sharing it is an expression of you. It's no longer a burden or things like that. Sure, there are moments where I get into, and we will discuss also this further, maybe in terms of, you know, how to follow through. But because you have that determination to that, I want to be part of the world change, then you continue seeking ways and continue expanding on it. So thanks for the comment. Anna has another comment, so I will read it. Yes, it starts with something as small as a tiny seed, like an interest or an idea, and then only when you nurture it and start living it, it can flourish into a real living purpose. But a tree won't just suddenly emerge out of nothing. Yeah, definitely. Which is what many times it stops us. Like, oh, I already want to be this super knowledgeable person that speaks fluently in public. That won't happen right away. It is an entire process to be walked through. So, and we have another one from Tormod, and he's saying purpose is simply to find, is simple to find, yes, and it evolves as we go, steady day by day, breath by breath towards a greater goal. Yes, it is a day-to-day process. I agree on that.
Yeah. Cool. I'm also, we talked about the point of effortless, but I'm pretty sure that you have found or faced some challenges. But before we go there, I want to ask you, in your exploration, investigation of realizing that art is not necessarily the utmost potential for you, for something that you can individually express. You felt that there is more for you, meaning you're not judging art or artists, it's just that there was this fall inside of you that just wanted to do something else. And then you went and investigated the options, and in that you also found someone that inspired you to go into politics and economics in your creativity and remaining with your creativity force. Can you tell us more about that person, the artist that became a politician? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Through my search in the last years in college in art, I had to obviously make that last proposition of what I'm going to do with art and who I'm going to be. So I was trying to conciliate both sides, art and politics. And of course, we know that many artists have been, are political in nature, and some more than others. And I tend to veer to learn the lives of those that were in political parties. One in Mexico is David Alfaro Siqueiros, who I came to admire not only for his art and his work, but also because he had these political ideas and he was shameless and completely standing by it and willing to go to jail if necessary. So that was from the Mexican side, but also I'd say that the one that really opened the whole point for me was Joseph Beuys, who is a German artist, was a German artist. And he decided to, he was a teacher at some point, but also decided to make political activism and make it part of his work. He actually became a candidate for a party. He created a party. He also created a school where he would encourage precisely these new ways of thinking of every human being as an artist, just because everyone has that creative potential. So this is what he called social sculpture, which is a concept that I became fascinated by because that's what I wanted to do. I realized that in order to become that change of the world, it's not only what I could produce for the people, but I had to change myself to become an example of what it is that I want the world to be. So in a way, it's that self-creation point taken as my own work of art. And that was essentially what I decided to make of my work of art. Not only something out there as a painting, etching, and so forth, but rather focusing on myself, changing myself, integrating principles that I could live by, so that anything that I share, anything that I create, then comes from that point of self-change. And we can define these hangouts as happenings and things like that. It's a matter of definition, but it's all about what one can create in the end. And Joseph Beuys was a person that questioned money. He had the guts to actually have a discussion with economists on money, challenging all ideas of money, from whom I actually learned and taken a lot of the concepts that I share on money from him. And there's a book about it, and his political participation also opened up the possibility of me seeing, hey, both worlds are not opposing each other. They're actually very intertwined, and why not being part of it and define it as I want it to be, you know, and creating these Hangouts as a point of creation. Why not? Yeah.
Very cool. Cool. Okay, so I do want to hear about your challenges with, yes, you have given yourself a purpose to walk that path, but with every path, there is challenges and that needs to be overcome in one way or another. So maybe tell us a little bit about your challenges, what you face and how you overcome them.
Yeah, one of the greatest challenges is when, as it is said, when you stare into the abyss and then you get sucked into it. And this is when you go very deep into understanding how the world system functions, and things can get very dark, very bleak, very gloomy, seeing no way out. I've been there, done that many, many times. And this is one of the points that I definitely suggest to anyone not getting disempowered by how things look like right now. What we're facing right now are manifested consequences of us actually having been very complacent and absent-minded, and why not also brainwashed to accept things as they are. And only now that we're seeing massive consequences, not only in politics or economics, but at an environmental level in our social relationships, we are realizing, oh God, what have we done? Or what have we allowed ourselves to become as this world? So things can get very difficult at times from that perspective, from not getting sucked into that point of there's no way out. And it really requires us to continue focusing on the solution, to understand the problem, but not get sucked into the problem only, but push forward for solutions. And also continue making connections to people. These Hangouts have been very supportive for me, because every single person that has been in these Hangouts presents a new idea, a new perspective, their own motivation being shared toward the same goal. And that's what's so fascinating and so empowering and motivating, that there are more people that are doing this in their own way, with their own groups, in their own places in the world, but all together toward the same goal. So that is the way to overcome some of the challenges, but also, in the sense of being a part of, a person that speaks in these Hangouts and where many more people will be watching and things like that. It does take overcoming fears and fear of being judged and things like that. But ultimately, that's when you have to remind yourself, well, I'm just another human being talking to another human being, sharing this with many other human beings for a greater purpose. So it's when that purpose overrides one's personal limitations as well.
Yeah, it's because you already made a decision. The purpose is just an execution of your decisions. So it makes it easier and, again, effortless to walk through the challenges. And I think that's also what you just said is a gift that you can give to all of your audience. Many people are stuck in the problems and complaining about politicians and complaining about how bad the world is or how bad the economic system is. And I often tell people when I hear complaints is then, what is the solution? What would you do? Because unless you are able to stand as a point of the solution, there is no point in complaining, because complaining just perpetuates the problem. So always move to solutions, and everyone has the solution inside of them. They just need to expand it a little bit more and move from the victimization that they are in while complaining and move to the empowerment side of themselves, which is, okay, so what is the solution? So
absolutely. And it's also going from that self-destructive phase that I also went through. I wasn't this bubbly person always, from that self-destructive and seeing everything bleak to that decision of rather creating something that is supportive. It wasn't natural to me. I have to explain this very much. It would come easier to me to say everything is just, a big problem, not my problem. I don't have anything to do with it. It was a real decision to recognize that we created it all, we are all responsible, and let's push for solutions. that is like a continuous process, because it wasn't in my nature to always see the solution. So that's why we also encourage everyone also sharing in these Hangouts to always look at the solutions if you're explaining a problem. And also that very important point that you mentioned on not falling into this victimization of, oh, you know, others created the world, it is the elite that are the problem, the politicians, or I didn't sign up for this world, but we are part of it. So how can we deny our responsibility to it? And that simplifies also our way to see it through. It's our creation, so we can change it.
Cool. Thank you. And what moments or what things can you define as your successful experiences when it comes to your new path of politics, economics, presentation of the problem, the solution in the online world?
Well, I would say that these Hangouts are already part of something that I wouldn't have thought I would be doing, specifically with all the people that have agreed to come here and share themselves. Many times, I guess that part of the challenges was also inviting certain people and saying, nah, they won't come, you know, they're so busy and so forth. And they ended up coming and sharing and realizing that, sure, we have a lot to speak about and share with more people. And that's what we will be creating these Hangouts for, to become a platform that can not only stand as a source of information or self-education being shared by others, but also as a point of motivation of saying, hey, I would like to be there someday sharing what I've investigated in my work, or this is something that I'm interested on. Because it's not only about finding important people, so to speak, but rather seeing how can we make ourselves relevant, decide to do something that stands in one field of the world system that we want to change and be a part of that change. So that is something that I would define as a success, the fact that we can create these videos and that they are there for posterity on YouTube, and that people might watch them later and then contact us and be part of something greater, so to speak, which many people might not see as easy, but it is easier nowadays in terms of the internet. And this also leads with Leanne Gale's question of how can we connect more. And this is something that we also discussed in the previous Hangout. These Hangouts are a way of already connecting. Like you and many others, I've gotten to know and talk to for the first time throughout these Hangouts. And it is a point of walking through anyone's idea of how can you just meet someone that you haven't ever talked to. But because we all have the same outcome and the same purpose in many different ways being lived, this connects us already. But it is also a part of whether there's people that say, well, you know, social media, the internet is not my thing. I'd rather do something in my community. And that's something also very cool. And we would also like to have more people sharing that story here in the Hangouts, where they decide to do something in their locality and do something that maybe it's related to their work as well. And or at a personal level that stands as a point of change in the world system. So the possibilities to connect is rather making a decision to, hey, kind of knock someone's door and make that connection, and keep that connection open to many more people as well. But it's like that point of visibility, I'd say, because how can I connect to someone that doesn't make themselves present in one way or another? And that's also been very satisfactory in terms of being in Facebook and having people message you and say, hey, I like that recording that you made on this topic and it made me realize things, I agree with you. You know, connecting with people on that level is very fulfilling as well, because it dignifies your life and having this kind of activity and purpose that you can live, even if it's not your 24/7 thing, that you can do and live on your as a hobby, as part of your free time, so to speak.
And I mean, again, knowing you for the last 6-7 years and seeing you very isolated before, communication was not your highest skill. You actually took the responsibility and you became a very well communicator. You developed the communication skill, which is when it wasn't something you were born with. You actually had to develop that So I think you also stand in as an inspiration for a lot of people that believe that because they are very introverted and isolated from the world, it will always be like that. And you're actually proving with your living example that it doesn't have to. It's a decision that you can take, and maybe people that are watching your hangouts and feel that they are introverted or isolated or don't have communication skills can come to you, approach you, and basically, follow your steps of the process that you have taken to develop, that necessary skill to do what you're doing right now.
I would say also that, practical steps. First of all, it's like having that driving force that I've explained of, yes, I have to do something about world change, but also writing. Writing has been very supportive for me to, first of all, get out of all the fears and limitations that I had, and to rather write on something like a world problem that I came to be aware of and push myself to see the solutions. Writing and then making the vlogs on or videos on YouTube had been very supportive in terms of developing that way to convey things and that kind of skill that is not something I'm born with. I had to develop it. So don't be scared. Don't judge yourself if you kind of want to record yourself and see that you can barely speak. It will pass, as you practice it and as you continue doing it, you can do it. And I've also learned a lot from the many people that I watch on interviews. I watch interviews constantly. And this is something that I do even when I'm taking a shower, when I'm eating. It's like a way of living where I'm constantly getting feedback from many other people. I'm talking on many topics. And this really makes us more human and also more aware of what is going on in this world. Sometimes we are so focused on our personal problems, which, they have to be dealt with. But it's also very cool always to see, okay, what's going on in the world? I want to see that person's perspective. And, people like James Corbett, for example, have been a great source of inspiration. And even if I don't agree with everything that he says, just the fact that he has that drive and commitment to investigate and publish, I saw the power of sharing with people and how that can open up possibilities for others at the same time. So I said, hey, that sounds very cool. I want to do the same in my own version, so to speak.
And did you need someone to believe in you to make this decision of moving from art to politics or economics? Do you need that push?
Yes, I definitely did have someone in my life that at some point placed the possibility of, well, if you're so interested in making a change in the world, why don't you go into politics? And I was like, no way, never. And it became like this nightmare in my head, like, no, never. I don't want to do anything with the system. It's awful, things like that. But then within the understanding that, yes, that's how the world works, so I have to understand it if I want to create any form of change in it. That really helped me to see that as a point, but also saying, you can do it. And that ability of saying to someone, you can do it if you give yourself that point to focus on, was very empowering. It's funny how sometimes we don't believe in ourselves and how we think that we are not good enough to do something, or that we are not strong, or we are not knowledgeable enough. But then I realized that it's, as anything, a process of creation. I guess that in a way the art thing did assist me in seeing that you don't create a sculpture right away. You have to go beat by beat, finding ways and sometimes destroying the whole thing to recreate it and build something that stands. So that is something that, yes, we do have to develop that sense of believing in ourselves, that we can do it. If you don't have that someone in your world, I can also talk to you. You can contact me and say, hey, I have this idea, but I'm doubtful, and we can talk through it, walk through it. I've done it with certain people that have contacted me because of these Hangouts, and it has been also very cool to see people kind of taking that decision to do something more related to the world system, for example. So, yes, that is the story.
I mean, that is exactly what I wanted to say, that you are standing as that person who believes in someone else. I myself as well. I personally believe that everyone has a potential, and everyone can give themselves a purpose purely just by looking at the baby that is coming to the world. But sometimes we do need a guidance, or we need a support structure to become the best that we can be, to fulfill our purpose. I'm saying like that because there is nothing much to fulfill once you realizing that it's just an expression of yourself that you are expressing in this world. So yes, you are standing also as that point of someone that believes in you, meaning for your audience, you are standing as that point. So I want to thank you for that. But
and also, to everyone, sorry for interrupting, but to everyone that is in our group as Equal Life Foundation, we are constantly giving feedback to each other and pushing each other. I'd say that I wouldn't have been able to do this without the group that we are. I mean, yes, I stand as the forefront of this, but I always speak as a we, because there is a whole team behind us, and there is constantly people that assist me, and we assist each other in continuing to redefine our purpose in this great plan that we have as, changing the world. So I didn't want to leave that out, for sure. It's very important and very satisfying to be part of a group that has that same vision. It's very empowering. We always learn from each other. And I would definitely recommend to anyone to, if not joining us, be part of any other community or group that you may find out there that you identify with, because that will make you grow as an individual.
Cool. Okay. So is there anything more that you want to share with your audience about your purpose, your process that you walked, maybe a word of inspiration?
Well, it's definitely important to not give up in the sense of how things look at right now in the world. I'd say that that's the most important thing, and to not see yourself as meaningless, or not being knowledgeable enough, or not being prepared enough to speak of anything. It is a process, as I said before, we are not taught these things in school. We have to actually develop them. So self-education is very, very empowering. I would definitely suggest everyone to take it on. All the Hangouts that we have here can stand as little starting points for you to continue from there. Find that point that really motivates you, that drives you. To me, it has been these topics, but to someone can be health or nutrition or being a teacher or science, new developments that are coming up that they want to continue learning from, how to be better parents. We've had many people sharing from their day-to-day living how they have become part of the world change just by changing the way that they live in their lives. And if more us do that, that 1+1 change becomes possible. Because sometimes I would get very overwhelmed, like, I have to change the world and I have to drive people to, and that really becomes like a burden, because it's impossible to create such form of instant change for everyone else. No, each one has to stand in their own positions in the world, find that one thing that you are inspired by, that you want to express, and develop it, work through it, actually commit to, for example, if you like publishing things or writing, then commit yourself to write, to publish things, and see it as you grow. Now, just like an artist creates a sculpture, sculpt yourself, sculpt your creation, your writing, or whatever you want to share, not only in the internet, but maybe in your community, and see it how it grows as you work with it, as you become it, as you make it your purpose. So to not be afraid of doing that, to not diminish yourself, because world change won't happen unless each one of us does this for ourselves first.
Very cool. And I'm pretty sure we're going to leave some links where people can come, and also if they want to ask me for support in relation to what is their specific expression that will be their life force for their purpose, more than welcome to drop me an email, or anyone that wants to find their expression within politics and economics and don't really know how, can find you. And I think something that is another lesson that I learned is the statement of never forget your process, because each one of us has a process, and that will be an example for other people people processes. So it's so honored to be the one that interview you today, where you shared your process and stand as an example, just join the timeline and the steps that you had to take to be who you are now. Because many people think, just looking, and judging what they see, oh, they must be what they are now. And they don't consider that there was a process that was walked, and there was a change that has been made. So let's find out what the process, what were the steps, so that I can also be that. I can also have the potential to change. So we need to ask questions. We can't assume that people are just born as they are. There is always a space for change.
That is so very important. And yes, it's kind of great to finally have somewhere that I can show like my presentation card, because yes, I talk to many people, I give my input, but maybe people think that I was always like this geared towards solutions and things like that, which wasn't the case. So this definitely stands as proof that anyone can do it if you set yourself to do it. And yeah, please contact Maya.
And if there is support and guidance as well,
Yeah, definitely. And with you as well, people can contact you. So thank you to everyone that placed the comments, to Gabriel, to Jean, to Anna. Kanea had a question but never got through, so maybe if you have it later on, the YouTube comments will be available as well. So thanks a lot, Maya, for the interview. It was great to share.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and allow me to interview you.
Yes, and maybe you should do your own Hangouts as well, specialize on your career.
I am planning to do that. I will.
Awesome. So we will place a link to Maya's website as well for anyone. And thanks to you guys for viewing, and thank you for listening to my story. I'm definitely here. I'm waiting to hear your story next. So please don't hesitate on contacting us and sharing what you're working on, what your plan is, what you're placing in motion. That is very valuable to all of us, because that's what these Hangouts are for. So thanks a lot, and see you guys next time. Bye, Maya.
Bye.